So I'm here to document my story for the first time publicly. A lot of people who know me already know this, but I'm going to put it out to the world. This is the moment that changed my life forever. So it was 1986. I was just barely 18 in May. May 27th is my birthday, so 1986 I turned 18. My father had died 2 years prior, and I was a daddy's girl, and everything was really messed up, and I was a little rebellious at the time. I hadn't graduated high school yet, and I had had my heart broken from my high school sweetheart. He dumped me, and for another girl he wanted to be with, which they didn't get together, but that doesn't matter. My heart was broken, and there was a new kid in school. He was 17, but he was really cool, I thought, and he rode a motorcycle, and he was gorgeous, and he wanted to be with me, so I started dating him and going out with him a year prior, and we were going out together. It was kind of rocky, but he had the motorcycle, and as soon as I turned 18, I left my mother's home to stay with him for a while. I stayed there for like a month. One night, because he was living with his father, who was single, and we didn't have any money, obviously. We were young and dumb. And he had a card that his mom had given him for, I think it was like Chevron or something, a card, or it might have been, I don't know, it was one of the gas stations. And he had a card, and we were hungry. And there was no food in his dad's house at all. So we were going to go on the motorcycle and drive out to the valley. We lived in Sunland, Tahunga. Well, we lived in Tahunga at the time. And we were going to drive the back road, 45-mile-an-hour highway, to the nearest Chevron that had food. And we were going to get some sandwiches and stuff. So we were getting ready to go. And my mother, who was a devout Christian and Holy Spirit filled, she called me on the phone, and she had a premonition, I guess you can call it, or the Lord showed her something bad was going to happen to me, and she begged me not to get on that motorcycle. And I was like rolling my eyes. Mom, he is really good and safe with me. He doesn't go over the speed limit. We wear helmets, which was a lie. I didn't wear a helmet. But I should have, but at the same time, well, I'll get to that. But anyways, I was like, he's really good. So we got on the motorcycle. I told her it would be fine, and she was really worried. It was a Wednesday, so she had church that night. And we got on the motorcycle, and he did. He rode very well, very careful with me on the back. And I was holding on to him like you do when you're on the back of a motorcycle. And I could hear the wind, you know what it's like, anyone who's been on a motorcycle. The roar of the engine and the wind and the sound. And as we're driving on Sheldon or Wentworth, I believe it is, we were driving the back roads, and we get to where the golf course is. And all of a sudden, I just remember seeing flash of bright light, and then boom, and I remember the wind being knocked out of me. Suddenly the wind stopped. I couldn't hear the sound of the engine anymore. I could just hear like crushing, and I remember just a continuous boom, wind knocked out of me, boom, wind knocked out of me, boom, wind knocked out of me, boom, wind knocked out of me. And then I kind of flew and landed, and I was like and then suddenly everything was like the Twilight Zone. I was laying there like, what just happened? I was wide awake, but in the Twilight Zone. And I remember all these people coming around, and like I could hear them talking. I could hear certain things like, oh my God, look at her. Is she dead? I remember hearing all these things. And then after, I don't even know how long, probably a second or two, I remember a woman, her name was Jessie, and she was like my angel. I remember her screaming for them to back up, and she covered me with a coat, her coat, and she like kind of put my head under her hand, you know, and or over her hand, and she was telling me, you know, it's going to be okay. And I was talking to her, and I remember thinking, I'm dying. And I was telling her, I'm dying. You know, I could feel it. I could feel myself drifting away. I didn't really know how bad I was at the time, but she said, no, you're not. And for some reason, she knew how to get to me at that moment. It's like God was there with me. And she said, you know, what is your mom going to think? You're not dying. You can't die. What is your mom going to think if you die? She's going to be very upset. You have to not die, you know, and stay awake with me. And I remember snapping out of it really quick and being like, oh my God, my mom's going to kill me. And I told her that. My mom's going to kill me. She told me not to get on the motorcycle tonight. And I did. And she's going to kill me. And she's like, no, 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 she's not going to kill you. She is going to be so happy that you're okay, you know. And I was like, you know, I don't know. She's going to be really mad at me. And I was just worried about her being mad at me because I had gotten on the motorcycle and she had warned me. So I was laying there. I had no idea at the time that I was literally bleeding to death because this van that hit us wrecked me. My leg was torn up to shreds. It was amputated at the scene and I was bleeding out. My pelvis was split in half. My left hand was crushed into what my surgeon said was a million pieces. And my left arm was completely broken in half. And I was laying there. And I remember I had on this coat that my mom had just bought me for my birthday that I wanted really bad. It was really cool, like Michael Jackson style kind of, you know, 80s coat. It was corduroy and it had like 2 layers. It had the zip up in the center, and then it had these cool like I don't know what you would even call them, but it had like cuffs that came around in an 80s style, and it was black and it had like a gray stripe down. It was really cool, and I loved this jacket. And my mom had just bought it for me. And I remember when the ambulance got there, thank God they were just down the road. And they got there, and the EMT was like, you know, cutting off my clothes, my pants and stuff. And when he got to my jacket, I was like, don't cut the jacket. Please don't cut my jacket. And he was like, are you serious? You're laying here like dying and you're worried about your jacket. And I was like, please, I just got it for my birthday. Please don't cut my jacket. And so he's like, okay, we'll try. And he reached down and he grabbed the sleeve of my coat, and I screamed, I guess. I was like, ah. And he said, yeah, okay, we're cutting your jacket. So they cut my jacket off, and I was just so devastated. And I kind of remember, everything was happening so slow-mo, but so fast at the same time. And I was awake. And then I remember they called a helicopter because it was that bad. And the helicopter got there pretty quick. And I remember they went to put me on the gurney, and I blacked out. The next thing I knew, they were rolling me to the helicopter, I guess. And the next thing I knew, I was up in the air in this helicopter. I remember hearing my boyfriend at the time, who was also on the motorcycle. He had gotten a broken compound fracture of his tibia and fibula, and or tibula, fibia, whatever. Anyway, he had gotten a broken leg. And he was screaming in the back of the helicopter, and I had all these people around me working on me, and I woke up to him screaming, and they were trying to keep me alive, and they kind of yelled at him and said, you know, we're working on her, she's dying here, you're going to be fine. And he had a different kind of insurance too, and the insurance people would not allow them because it was Kaiser. Sorry, Kaiser, but that was the way it was back then, and I don't know how it is now, but in 86, you could not give like pain medication to somebody who's in pain because they would not pay the people back. So it was just that way. He had to wait for them. So I feel bad for him, but at the same time I was dying. So yeah, so then I remember being up there. I remember hearing all the screaming, and I remember landing. And then I remember them rolling me off the helicopter, and they started rolling me in, and we hit a bump. and I went out again. And then I woke up and I was in like the trauma unit, I guess, and I remember my mom was there and my surgeons were there, and they were all talking, and I remember hearing them say, we're not going to be able to save her leg. I remember that much. And I remember my boyfriend's dad kissing me on the forehead, and he was freaking me out. And he was all, oh, my baby, mwah, 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 on my forehead. And I was like, what is going on here? And I could hear all this rambling and rushing around. And then I remember this nurse's face coming into my face and saying, okay, count back from 10. And I was like, huh? And then I was out. And I don't remember what happened right then after that, but I do remember I began having terrible, I feel like I went to hell. I started having really terrible, they say hallucinations, but I felt really spiritually attacked by the devil, and I was seeing the most evil things and being attacked, and I didn't know what was going on, but I was scared out of my mind. I remember that. Spiritual attacks, and I remember saying, God help me, you know. And I guess I went through that for the first week almost, several days anyway. They had done 15 hours of surgery on me from what I understand, and I was barely alive. I was in obviously critical care unit and intensive care unit, and I was not doing well. They didn't think I was going to survive. They gave me a very small percentage of chance of living, and they were like, we just have to wait and see what happens, you know, it's by the minute now. So I was out of it though, and I was having these horrific like demonic attack hallucinations, and come to find out that the Demerol wasn't working well with me. So my mom made them change the medication, and the minute they changed the medication, I came to. But anyway, when I woke up, I remember I was in a room, in a hospital room, and my mother looking just disheveled, you know, and tired and a mess, reading her book. She loved Jude Deveraux, so I think she was reading a Jude Deveraux book. And she was sitting there just so tired, and that's when I came to, and I was like, first thought, Mom, is my leg gone? And she said, yes, honey, it is, and you're going to be okay, though. And I was like, she rushed to me, and I was like, everybody's going to think I'm a freak. And she said, no, they won't, and if they do, they're not worth your time anyway. You are strong young woman, and anyone who thinks that isn't worth your time anyhow. And I was just in my head like, I can't believe this has happened. I don't have a leg anymore, you know. I'm all in traction and have this big pelvis vice over my pelvic area, and I was in so much pain, and I had wrappings on my arm and wrappings on my hand, and everything hurt, you know, and really bad. I've never felt pain like that in my life. And I remember just like, I can't believe this just happened to me. And my mom was just so good. And she was telling me, you know, you're so strong and beautiful, and don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about that. They're not worth your time if they think anything bad of you. Anyone who takes the time to get to know who you are and to see what a strong woman you are, they're the ones who are getting the gift to know you. And she encouraged me, you know. And then, of course, the nurses came in and they called the doctor, and then everyone came in. They were like, wow, we didn't think you were going to make it. And they were all proud and happy. Anyway, I went through a really hard time, and I got a lot of encouragement from people back then. I had a lot of things happen, like, okay, sorry, I got a call. So anyway, I had a lot of support, and even Danny Trejo came to see me. He was really good at, you know, being there for people, and he did a lot of charity stuff. He came and saw me. I had the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers people coming. I had a lot of encouragement back then. And the police, of course, were coming because they were investigating and stuff. Like a month in, the pictures that I show on the internet are from actually the next month. I was already healing a little bit, and they had come in to take photographs of me to prosecute the guy who hit me. He had been a drunk driver, like habitually. He had been 3 times before me convicted of drunk driving accidents. I don't know what else, but I know that he had 3 other accidents that he had drunk driving, and one of them even had injuries before mine, but not as severe as mine. Mine was the worst, and the guy was just a habitual drunk driver. So anyway, yeah, people like Danny Trejo came, and I had like a lot of encouragement and hope, and I had a good attitude. I always have had like a positive outlook, so I try to stay positive, and having the encouragement from my mom and my little sister Jenny. She was little at the time, and well, she was 10, so she's 8 years younger than me, and we were very close. We've always been very, very close, and she would come in and, you know, see me and everything, and they just gave me a lot of encouragement. I was young still, and they told me that it, you know, it doesn't matter how bad it is, that I could do this. And yeah, so I tried. I did try, and the Lord had saved me. And so I didn't even know how or why, but he did. And I did like see the devil. So I was really scared because I saw the devil during those hallucinations, and that freaked me out. So I spent 3 months in the hospital in this traction on my leg. They had like a screw going through my leg, and they had to pull it apart because I had lost 2 inches of my femur at the scene. They couldn't find the bone. So they were trying to stimulate the growth. They were hoping they could stimulate the growth by chipping. I had a lot of surgeries during that time. They chipped some bone out of the back of my pelvis in the iliac crest area. They chipped the bone off, and they kind of placed it in the space, hoping that it would stimulate my bone to grow. They did like TENS therapy on it and all kinds of stuff. Because I had to be in there because of the pelvis split, the vise back together, the pelvis, I guess, takes longer to heal because it was completely split in half, and they were vicing it back together. So I had to be in there for a while anyway. So they were just trying things, hoping that I could have a good outcome with my leg. And of course that didn't work, but so they chipped the bone away. I had several surgeries and stuff, and then I got infection in my stump where, you know, it was completely gone. I didn't have much left anyway. They had a hard time, but my surgeon was adamant about saving my knee, because back then especially they were like, below the knee is way better than above the knee in amputations. It's just the way it is. And they were, because I'm so tiny, I'm only 5 foot tall, and at the time of my wreck I only weighed 95 pounds. So they were very worried about me having an above the knee amputation. So he really wanted to try to save my knee, which was his goal. And I didn't know anything. I was going with the flow. So anyway, I got infected where because they take up the flesh from underneath on the stump, and they pull it around the bone that's left, and then they stitch it up. Well, I had gotten an infection in there, and it got really bad, and it got to the bone. So they were very concerned. So I had to go back into surgery, and they literally had to scrape the infection, scrape the bone, and they had to leave a hole completely open because they said it needed to get air and heal from the inside out. And he told me this is going to be very, very, very painful, and that I just had to be strong. And he was really serious about that, because it's all the nerves are open and exposed to the air. You have no idea how painful that is. And he would come in every day, and they would stuff the hole with like gauze, after they clean it with hydrogen peroxide and scrape it out every day with a Q-tip, they would stuff it with like gauze to cover the bone that's exposed and stuff. And that was the most painful thing I've ever experienced up until now anyway. And it was just horrific, like torture. And I begged him, like, please come give me my pain shot before you come in. Please, please. I begged him. And he never would. And I got really mad at him. Like, why do you put me through this torture and then give me the pain medication? And so one day I just lost it on him. And I was like, you're such a blah, blah, blah. You know, why are you putting me through this? And then he straight up told me, because you're going to have pain for the rest of your life. And you need to toughen up. And I don't know, it clicked. I got that. So I wasn't mad at him anymore. I started toughening up, you know, like, okay, I get it. I'm going to have a life full of pain. This kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So yeah, that was horrific. I went through a lot of things and surgeries. The bone grafting didn't work. So they ended up having to take me out of traction, let the bone fall back where it may. So I lost 2 inches, plus I have the slivers of bone. But they put a plate in my leg to hold the bone together, and then a screw through the top of my knee, what was left there. I really have a very damaged amputation. It's not a normal amputation, and I can't bend my knee. So I have to get specialized prosthetics, and I don't walk right. My pelvis was vice back and crooked, and I just have a lot of issues there. But it is what it is. Then, so I'm in the hospital for 3 months. We had to wait until my pelvic healed enough to where they could take the vise out, the screws out of my hips and the vise off. And so that was the longest. And then I had to learn to stand up on my leg and get my balance again, my vertical balance again. And so that was 3 months later that I started, you know, getting ready to get out of the hospital and everything. And just before that, I found out I was pregnant with my son. So yeah, I got pregnant trying to keep my boyfriend, who was already out of the hospital, from cheating on me, because that's who I am, and that was stupid of me. But I did get pregnant, and my doctor believes it's because, you know, of all the antibiotics and stuff. It just made it easier. I know that sounds insane, and you just don't even want to know, but I was then trying to heal still. I had it ended up being over a year of open wound healing and being pregnant in a wheelchair. For like the entire pregnancy, I was in a wheelchair and stuff. But I chose to live life to the fullest and to be happy and positive and try to be an inspiration. I was an inspiration in the hospital to a lot of people. I didn't even talk about that yet, but yeah, they even used me for another patient who was whining because he was drunk and he crashed into a tree and he broke his legs all up. And he was so mean to the nurses, and he was throwing stuff at him, like throwing his food trays at him and stuff. And they were like, oh, he needs a lesson from you. And I told him, hey, I'll talk to him. Wheel me in there. So like they would use me for stuff like that. It was really cool. But I was like, hey, it could be worse, dude. You know, trust and believe it could be worse. Look at me. And I'm not sitting here throwing stuff at the nurses, right? You have to have a positive attitude. And I even had like the nutrition guy. He would come up on his job, but then he would also come up and just hang out with me on his lunch break or something, because they just loved how positive I always was. Because I just choose to try to be positive all the time. Even when life kicks me around, I try to be happy, because that's the way we should be. And I have a long life of fighting, and I don't want to be one of those people who just let themselves die miserable. So I try to be positive all the time and be happy. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially in a condition like mine. So yeah, so then I ended up having my son And 9 months later, so literally almost exactly 1 year to the day. So my wreck was July 23rd, 1986. My son was born July 20th, 1987. So that ought to give you a picture. And I still didn't have a healing all the way when he was born. And so I wanted to be the best mom I could be, and I wanted to be able to take care of my son. And so I found a way, and I scooched on the floor with my son in one arm, and I used the other arm to scooch, and I would had a bath, a baby bath, the portable one, and I would bathe him in that, and I would change his diapers. I had the diaper pad. I did everything from the floor pretty much when I was, raising my son. And, I just had a positive attitude. A lot of people were encouraging me all the time, and I just refused to, give in. And I've lived that way for the entire 40 years I've been in this condition. Although a lot of bad things have happened along the way, I still try to stay positive. So I just wanted to, kind of give you an idea of when this all started and what happened to me. There's so much more to my life and so many more blows that I've had, but that's what happened to me in my wreck. I did eventually get a prosthetic leg. It was really hard to learn to walk on it. I get blisters, I get sores. It hurts. It's not easy being an amputee at all. And when you see someone out there doing stuff on a prosthetic leg, or even with an arm or something, it is not an easy task. So respect that. It's hard. It's really hard to be an amputee. It's hard. So I just wanted to kind of bring that out, and that is who I am. And after 40 years, I do have a lot more things going on. All the injuries have taken a toll on me. And it's really hard to even stand up in the morning, get my leg on as soon as I stand up. I mean, it's so bad. The pain is excruciating. It's like being tortured in a POW camp or something in another country every day for me. And I just keep going. And that's how I need to be. And by the grace of God, I am still here. I thank the Lord for all of it. For some reason, the Lord wants me here. And I'm working on trying to figure out why, because, my life has been really tough, and I don't know where exactly I belong in God's eyes, I guess you can say. I'm trying to work that out, pray and work that out with Him, because He has a purpose for me, and I just don't know what it is yet. So pray for me, guys. But this is the beginning of my story when everything changed. Thank you for listening. God bless you all. And that's it for now. I can't do no more. Bye.